Good evening, everybody. It is the evening of November 22nd, 2022. I think it's closing in around 6 p.m. I didn't look at the clock before I came on. This maybe quarter after 6, but we'll find out if I'm right about that afterwards. Welcome to the program. Quick programming note, Dana and I are planning on trying to do a live broadcast tomorrow on this channel. Chance to say hi for a little bit. We'll see if I can get it to work. I'm going to have to use the computer, which I don't like to do for this, but I'm going to try to do it anyway. My way of reaching out to you. I know we're all a bunch of misanthropes who don't really either have or get along with our families, so we'll be there with each other. That's what we can do, and it's part of the reason why I came back, just because you guys seem to enjoy it, and I miss chatting. I mean, I'm not expecting too much. Just hanging out here, getting ready for my fire to relight here. I got a wood stove these days, as you all know, which is good in the sense that I don't worry about running out of supplies, which is bad in the sense that I spend a lot of time working the fire. But hey, I live close to the land, and maybe, we all know I could use a little more exercise, so that ain't so bad. I want to talk about some events from today and some general impressions with you and the program. If you like what you hear, Venmo, CVC, PRV. And I'm also thinking about writing a book about the logic of going into exile. So let me know what you think about that. More for a younger audience, because I think we live in a gerontocracy. Gerontocracy is a big fancy word for old people running things into the ground. And with all respect to the seniors in this audience, who are amongst more intelligent people, I can't say that of the Congress critters down in Washington, and not to mention the corrupt bankers and the bloodsuckers, literally, at some points, adrenochrome, all that. You say every word, they'll get this channel banned, right? It's a good challenge. But we really are at a point where the youth are utterly disconnected. I was watching a couple videos talking about the rent situations, what a problem it is, and how fast it's going up. And people are like, oh, the landlords, we're going to raise the rates, and they can't raise it. The fact is, no one can afford anything. We're all getting screwed by the same bankers. That's true. But the idea that the old make a living off the young is a pretty cynical way to live, too. I mean, it should be a partnership. And it'd be fine if it was a partnership, if it was going both directions, but it isn't, because we live in a money-based society rather than a family-based society. And the disconnects between families are just disgusting. But what can you do? But I mention it because it's part of a wider trend that we were watching again. We were watching a lot of people getting on people who use food stamps, public assistance, different programs. And the reality is, that a lot of these guys who rail about this just don't understand is those are the working poor. You say you want to support the people who are working and not making much. Your service sector employees who are doing that crap job at Walmart or wherever, that's what they're making. I hate to say it, but in every state in America, unless you are disabled, a veteran, and usually you have to be a disabled veteran, depends on the state, or you are a senior or a minor, you are working if you're on food stamps, or you were recently unemployed, like the tens of thousands of people who already have been in the banking sector this month. The AI is going to run out of business in the white-collar jobs, in the support professions, and that we're going to see also after the Christmas season, which I predict will be a very weak one, because who can afford anything when you have to pay this much for food? We were watching Appalachian Homestead, one of the channels Dane is very fond of. And what Patara was saying, and she was showing an apples-to-apples comparison of food at Aldi. In some cases, the products cost twice as much after 1 year. And what do the people on Social Security get? If you were a poor pensioner, I'll tell you what you had in last year, because I happen to know this. I did the research on it. You saw your food stamps reduced by about a quarter. So you might have gone from, say, if you got $400, you'd be down to $300, depending on your state. You would lose $100. And you saw the amount you were getting a year go up about $30. At the same time, the energy prices went through the roof. Gas, has remained stable, but energy was very high for home heating, and electric bills have been insane for a long time. And food, which never went back down. And so what are these people supposed to do? Plus people, we don't talk about it a lot, but I'll mention it here, is people are still pretty sick from what happened post-COVID. And, personally, I think it's related to the jabs, and that the general immune health of the population has been weakened. And even if you didn't think it was medicine, look at the way we deal with all this bad news all the time, pretty much constantly. So when you think about those sorts of things, what you find is a world that increasingly is full of despair, and people are just using whatever small program they can find to get through. And yet there's other people, usually on the right wing, who crap all over them, and they're usually Christian channels, which annoys me because Jesus talked a lot about poor people and said the exact opposite. I tell you, and I say it once and I said it a million times, it's the truth. America has two parties. It has the party of lust, which is the Democrats, and is the party of pride, which is the Republicans. And you can add certain things, avarice to one, gluttony to the other. It's not hard to figure out because we are all looking for material wealth, and that's not where salvation is. I mean, material wealth is just a quicker pathway to death. And I'm not saying don't make money. I understand that, but I'm saying you can't think about those things. I read an amazing story the other day. I don't know if it's true or not, but I want to believe it is. About a guy who didn't eat for 480 days. He just had water, and he stared into the sun, and he survived. Now, I don't know how he made it all work, but apparently the story is true, and it really makes you rethink what's possible. I mean, whether it's true or not, it's a great story, and great stories deserve to be told. But the one thing that annoys me, and it's always annoyed me, and it will continue to annoy me, is people who are in better statuses thinking they did things right. There are a lot of people who did many right things who ended up through no fault of their own in a bad situation, okay? And a lot of people, frankly, who are successful who don't really deserve to be, but they got lucky. I mean, that's the way it is. And that's just the reality of it. And I don't get mad or resent people, but you know what? It's a bad look to kick people who are down. And the people who are at the bottom just trying to find a way to make it, it's hard. I mean, you could do it like I do it. I'm self-reliant, more or less. You know, I can, take care of our needs for an extended length of time. But some folks don't have that in them. And it's going to be hard. I know that the poverty's been pushed on them. I know our economy's been wrecked. I know the small businesses were closed and never opened back up. For those of you who are watching things overseas, keep an eye on this Chinese pneumonia thing. I'm always wondering when they're going to try to do another run of getting people scared over something. And it may be legitimate, by the way. Just because if you believe COVID was completely false, I don't, but if you do, that's fine. Be careful. Just because they trick you one way by not doing something doesn't mean they won't do it. Just because a false flag is done that's harmless doesn't mean a real attack isn't coming. These are the things you have to prepare for. And, we're sitting here on the anniversary, 60 years of JFK being killed, of the consolidation of the deep state under the Texas murderer Lyndon Johnson. It's a matter of public record. Look it up. You can figure out how they took control. And they took control because they wanted another war. Every time a politician dies, another war starts because war makes money. It's a dark sacrifice. It sanctifies money with blood. I mean, it really is. I mean, if you're willing to look outside of the sort of sophisticated explanations of things, it's kind of like the distribution chart, the bell curve, where, sometimes the low wit and the high wits come to the same conclusions for different reasons. But sometimes, and this is a beneficial thing, the moral view, which, sometimes all someone can handle, will lead you on the right way more often than not. And that's one of the values of being a good Christian, when you look for the greater mysteries, you begin to find the truth of Christ, but it's the people in between who believe the simplistic directions. Watch MSNBC nightly, the type. So, let's talk about Buffalo. I don't know what I make of it. It seemed like, in the end, from what I saw, there was a police chase. And I listened to Buffalo Radio because we have friends in the program. You know who you are. And, of course, you'll be watching. But it seemed like what happened was there was some police chase of a car that went and jumped. You can find the video. It's entertaining. But caused a crash and explosion off the Peace Bridge in Niagara Falls. I know this bridge. I've crossed this bridge. Actually, this was the first bridge I crossed into Canada. I remember because I went to eat at the Skylon on the other side. So how's that for being hyper-local, right? Those of you who live over there in Buffalo, shout out to Cheektowaga and all those places. I used to go to Duff's all the time. Anyway, back when I was a courier, and I regularly had jobs go to Buffalo. In fact, I had some jobs that even took me up to Canada. I went to Pearson Airport a couple times up in Toronto. Different life when I, wasn't afraid to cross borders. Just because of our government, not the other side. Just because they make it difficult. But anyway, Buffalo. The thing about it is, everyone rushed to call it a terror attack. And apparently it wasn't. Or maybe it was. I saw stories floating around about Iran passports, about Yemen passports. And it's like the narrative is ready to jump into action at the cause of an effect. And I was thinking when this thing happened, I'll tell you what I was thinking in real time. I was thinking, because there was a story coming out that was saying, oh, there were 3 other people with bombs. And of course, chatter's bad at the beginning. But I'm like, damn, I'm like, when did our government get good at doing its actual job? I'm like, I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And then as the story evolves, what you realize is they said this horrible terror thing, except it wasn't. It was kids acting goofy, but it shut down most of Buffalo. And I'm not saying it, I don't want to minimize it. Apparently they were going 80 miles an hour, and there was something in the car, and 2 people died. Although, who knows the truth of it, you know? The thing is, it's psychological warfare. Making people believe and disbelieve and believe and disbelieve leads people to have an inability to understand what's happening around them. And maybe that's where we are. Maybe that's part of the story. But I was wondering if there was something bigger that was supposed to happen, and maybe someone screwed up at first. But then at the end of the day, I'm like, well, and I prepared a little more because of it. I don't regret that. I got extra little bit of gas for my generator just in case, you know, which isn't bad. I'll use it in the car later. Not a big deal. But it just, it ends up being nothing. And I tell you, and this is a terrible admission, Lord, forgive me for this, but sometimes I wish something would just finally happen rather than this constant waiting for something to happen. It's worse, you know? It's like that scene in Lord of the Rings where Pippin's like sitting on the edge of a battle is worse than actually being in the battle. Now, in the bigger scheme of things, I'd love for things to hold up until we get to Argentina next year. Where, you know, Milei's settling in. But today we'll talk about a different election. We'll talk about what happened in the Netherlands. And it appears as of this hour that Geert Wilders and the PVV party, the anti-Islam, anti-immigration party, is going to win with a surprisingly large plurality of the votes there. I think they got about 35% of the vote, no, something like that. Oh, no, it's like 23%. But you need 76 seats to run the thing. It's a coalition, multi-party system. And they won 35, which is a huge amount. So they'll have a chance to form a government, and they may not. Every other party may come together to cuck against them, but I don't think so. It seems to me, and tell me if you ever noticed the same thing, that right-wing parties who are anti-Islam, anti-immigration, but pro-Zionist, which, you know, Milei is, Wilders is, Maloney has ended up being, are getting funded very, very well now. And it makes you ask if there's a grand bargain there to be made, saying that you get your ethno-state if you stop destroying ours, or you can have your religious state if you accept the Christians run things. And of course, I don't expect that to happen, by the way. I finished reading my book on a related note of Sabbatai Sabi, and one of the things that was really interesting, you learn out of it, was how it developed the custom within the various Jewish communities of, especially of the Sabbateans who are the Kabbalists, of developing Dogma, which is communities within other communities where they keep to their own faith, but they pretend to have someone else's. They have the outward manifestation. And it's interesting because they even traced it in the book all the way to Louis Brandeis, and who is a famous Supreme Court justice. Or, you know, for those who know the Reb Schneerson, same sort of thing comes out of it. But it's interesting that there's this messianic Kabbalistic impulse that is incredibly key in shaping the world. And how do you get away from that? And it doesn't seem like we're very good at it, I tell you that. But it does seem like that is the political novelty, because I think, to be honest with you, the sort of neoconservative controller types are spooked by the fact that their own kids hate them. And I think it's too late for them to turn this back. But they can try. I mean, for a while, the politics will probably look pretty good. And, you know, it's the same thing 4chan's warning about. You want to get drawn into a war for the people who've been replacing you, degrading your faith, speaking against it, you know, for hundreds of years. I mean, and I don't blame politicians making the deal to come forward. Sometimes you got to make deals like that. That's what you do if you live in that world. I lived in it many, many years. I understand that. And that's, you have to live with the people who are there. You have to work with them. You have to find solutions to things. But I will say, now that I get to be a philosopher, you know, I can say things a little bit more cleanly, even though life never works that way, is that unity is a cultural function. And you wonder how these things are going to play out. But, you know, we'll see. I don't know what the next election is, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see Le Pen come forward and EU get weaponized as a war against Islam. You know, because the interesting thing about the EU, and I've said this for years, but I never thought it would actually go anywhere, is that it could be pretty popular if it took the position that it was defending Europe, maybe like a Holy Roman Empire did in some sort of a way, from the invasions happening there. But they feel like they have to do that because of birth rate issues and, financial issues, they claim. Whether you believe that or not, I don't know. But it isn't working very well, and it hasn't worked very well, but it's a little late to be changing up the game plan. But some countries are trying, even Sweden, man. I mean, the pole change in politics is palpable. And it makes you wonder. It really makes you wonder what the story is behind the story, because we don't get it. Politics is theater. You all understand that. It's amazing how much, and this is my own personal exploration now, if you start to understand the deep occultists, and you start kind of chasing down what they're thinking and what they're doing, you can begin to see the plays on the field as they happen, and the shaping of ideas, and that's where you and I can fight. We can put ideas out there, we can popularize ideas. The 400-pound hacker went out there and said, hey, look what these people are doing here while they're not doing it here. And that, I said this, and I said it on Twitter, and I'll say it here to now. The West is not going to respond to any sticks because we're all beaten dogs. We can't move anyway. You better give us some good carrots if you want something to happen. Some really tasty carrots. And what does that look like? Well, how about our dignity back? How about some meaning to our lives? I mean, what can you do? I mean, technology's ruined. I don't know. I mean, I'm a little black pill on people. You know that. And I'm not a holiday person. You probably are not surprised by that if you've been listening to this a while. So, but I do think you could roll certain things back. Although, to be honest, if I'm really level with myself, I don't think the lessons that need to be taught can be taught this side of a collapse. You need to go through the collapse. The Dark Age is needed. I've seen some people write about that, and I actually tend to agree with it. That we need to spend time seeking out culture, wisdom, and unity. Rites of passage, normalize relationships between men and women instead of this crazy matriarchal ridiculousness. I mean, basically, men have been programmed to hate women. Women have been programmed to whore themselves out, excluding this audience, of course. And that what's going to happen is they will replace each other. Because they have different needs, and the needs don't come together anymore, because society inserts things between them at every step. I think it does more damage to women than men, but men enabled it from the beginning, so both sides have plenty to blame. Men needed to be stronger, and women needed to be corralled. You may not like that word, it's fine, I don't care. I often joke with Dana, I will, one day I might really write that book about the hen house thing, because I really think you can watch, if you had animals, and those of you do, you know what I'm talking about, you can learn so much about nature and behavior between sexes, between age, between generations, if you have animals, especially if you have a largest flock. Chickens are, I think, an incredibly effective teacher of the nature of how things work. And if you use a chicken as a predictive model for how a given couple, women, men dynamics would behave, they would be right more often than all the psychobabble that's out there, including the ones I enjoy. So, who knows? But I wanted to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Certainly want that to be the case. And over here, just kind of resting a little bit. I'll be honest, I had a lousy day. I'm wondering if this is what aging is like, where, I'm just like my how would you put it? My motor reflexes aren't as good as they used to be. And I haven't been feeling well. So it could be that. And there's a lot of other things it could be, but I'm kind of just like wondering, is this what it's like? Because, I think of getting old as your body dying over 40 years, and it's the experience I'm going to have to go through. Unless I die faster, which, given my taste in sweets, maybe that'll happen, but I hope it doesn't. I mean, I used to think of myself as a 30-year-old with 50 years left, and now I think of myself as a 40-year-old and 43 with 20 years left. And that's okay. Whatever, I'm looking forward to going home. My wife, Dana's been fighting the Lyme disease forever, and I just seen us taking a number on her, and she doesn't expect to make it nearly that long. So, we'll walk through it and do the best we can, because we are all having struggles, and I know you're having yours, whatever they are. Just pray the Lord gives you and your family a blessing, and just keep your head on a swivel. I don't know, I got a bad feeling about this weekend. Talked about JFK, Tet Offensive just keeps sticking in my mind. They wait till you're calm, and then something comes out there, and then people panic react. Because people just react. And then, the only time Congress ever acts quickly is when they want to take advantage of your panic reaction. So be careful. And watch your own. That's all I can say. All right. God bless. Thank you for supporting the program. If something interesting comes up, I'll be around. But for the moment, nothing too big. The Venmo CVC PRV PO Box 343 Eagle Lake, Maine 04739. And yeah, let me know if you'd be interested if I put together a book about what did I call it in my mind? I had a little name for it. Don't become bullet fodder. I think a lot of young folks need to be thinking this way, especially. Do not let them use you. Because we look at what they did to the guys in Ukraine and the women. Be careful. They don't care about you, but they will use you. And you need to be thinking about how to deal with that. Because you might think a lot of people will stand up, but hasn't been a lot of evidence of that, has there? All right. God bless. Have a great night.